Women often feel lost as investors, so where do we begin? And how should women get started? How do women make themselves heard at work, in meetings, in the boardroom, and also in their personal life? Now, I've been speaking to many young women, and those questions seem to come up over and over again. And the other two questions are, how do I make a decision, and how do I build confidence? We work in male-dominated industries, and we want to make sure that our voice is heard. We also live longer than men and need to prepare for our life stages. To help us find answers to these questions and more, I'm joined by Rita Trichur, an award-winning journalist and a great voice for female empowerment. Rita's a senior business writer and columnist at the Globe and Mail's Report on Business. Thank you so much for being here, Rita.
Well, thank you for having me.
I love our conversations. I have to tell you, our conversations are always just full of life and full of help for younger women and every woman of every generation. So I know that the pandemic has affected women's finances, but my question to you is how and what are the lessons learned from this crisis?
Okay, so at the beginning part of the pandemic, the first wave, women were disproportionately affected by the job losses. A lot of the job losses that resulted from the economic shutdowns were in the service industry, and women bore the brunt of those layoffs. And the lessons that we really have to learn is just, how easy it is for women's gains in the workplace to be wiped out. At one point, RBC had estimated that 30 years of women's workforce gains had been wiped out in a matter of weeks.
Wow.
I mean, that's really frightening if you think about it. So in terms of the lessons learned, we have to really think about ourselves, the need for an emergency fund. I mean, that goes for anyone, not just women. But I think the pandemic and the suddenness of the onset and the economic shutdowns, the layoffs, really brought that issue to the fore. The ability to manage your personal debt load was another issue that came to the fore during the pandemic. So women had a really difficult time also if they were able to keep their jobs. They were suddenly in this position that they were working from home. But then dual responsibilities of, working from home, but also taking on the, brunt of the childcare
Right.
and the domestic responsibilities. And that was a lot to juggle, particularly during a time of online schooling. I mean, it really pushed some women to their limits. So again, the choices that we make, life partner choices.
And that's really important. I just wanted to jump in there. A lot of people think that, I'll just marry, whomever or use somebody as a partner or have someone as a partner. But it's really a team effort. And you really do need to have the proper team member in order for yourself to flourish, in order for women to flourish.
You really need to have somebody who's interested in seeing you achieve your potential as a human being. And so, yes, pick your partner wisely.
I think that's really, really important. One of the things that you talked about, women struggled. I was speaking a while ago at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, and I basically said, well, my mother struggled when my parents came to Canada. Immigrants, she took whatever job she could. She was cleaning homes, carrying me in one arm, my diapers in another, my food, in another bag. And I said, the struggles have always been there. The only difference is that, now you can purchase your diapers and now you've got cell phones to make life a little bit easier. But other than that, it's always been a struggle.
Yes, this division of labor at home, the unpaid labor that women do to support the Canadian economy, I mean, it's exponential. We can't put a price on it, really. I know some people have tried to calculate it, but women do bear the burden of a lot of responsibility. And so, yes, a more equitable division of labor is very, very important in terms of your own personal relationship. But the other big issue and the big thing that happened during the pandemic is suddenly universal childcare was not just a women's issue. It started to be seen as good and smart economic policy. You suddenly saw the CEO of the Bank of Nova Scotia, as an example, speak up in favor of a universal childcare system. And you saw the federal government strike deals with a number of provinces.
So we will be right back with more Rita, more universal childcare, and everything else dealing with women in finance. Welcome back. We're discussing female empowerment as we work in male-dominated industries and make less than men, and we live longer. So let's continue, Rita. You were talking about one of the banks before we went to break. So I wanted to talk to you. How does the financial services industry fail women?
Well, their wealth management arms traditionally have taken a one-size-fits-all approach to their clients. And that does a real disservice to women because women have important life stages that they have to plan for that could be different than men's. You know, you have your maternity leave as an example.
Right.
If you choose to become a mother to plan for, you live longer than men, generally speaking. And so you might be at risk of outliving your savings. And so there are a lot of different priorities that women have to think about, including planning for the fact that you might actually end up earning less than your male counterparts, even if you have the same level of education, same credentials.
Right.
And so the financial services industry hasn't traditionally taken those sorts of life stage and systemic barriers into account when it comes down to providing financial advice. And part of the problem is that there is a lack of representation of women among financial advisors. Women are underrepresented. So if you want to change in the mindset, you really have to change your employee base so that it reflects the population so that these issues come up. Of course, advisors are required to know their client.
Right.
But how well do they really know their clients?
You know, one of the other things that I've seen, I've been working on Bay Street for 25 years now. A lot of women don't want to be advisors. How do we entice them to say, this is what I want to do, and I want to focus on women and help women?
There has to be cultural change in the industry. It is not enough for these firms to say, of course we support diversity, of course we support women's equality in the workplace. Show us through your leadership, show us through gender balance on your executive teams, on your boards, show us in terms of the service that you provide your clients, and then people will believe that.
You know, those are really good points. I want to step back now because a lot of women, a lot of young women are graduating from universities, from colleges, but they don't really know, whether they should start saving, a lot of them think that they have to go to an app because that's what everybody else is doing. They don't realize that they can actually go see an investment advisor or a financial planner or somebody. So what advice would you give women about money management and life when they first graduate from school?
Start saving as soon as possible and automate it. Create a system where, automatically a portion of every paycheck goes towards savings. Make it really easy for yourself so you don't have to think about it.
Right.
You don't have to second guess yourself. The second thing is, don't go with the financial advisor that your father or your brother or your uncle or other family member, your cousin, went with just because, your family has a long-standing relationship with that person. Go with the person that feels right for you.
Right.
Do you feel like the person is talking down to you when they speak to you? Do you feel like the person feels that you ought to be deferring your financial decisions to, somebody else in your family? You don't want that. Does the person make you feel silly if you're asking basic questions? If you say, I don't understand what this investment is, I don't understand the risks. If that's the case, trust your gut. Trust your gut and go with the person you feel comfortable with.
I think that's really important because people think that, I've been with this person or my friends have been with this person. It's a relationship and it has to work both ways. You both have to want to speak to each other. You both are going to have to want to contact each other on a regular basis. So, if this one person doesn't work out for you, go and interview a few more. It's okay to interview investment advisors or financial planners for yourself.
Absolutely. And, ask all the questions that you need to have asked. Feel comfortable. And before you even start these conversations, understand your own risk tolerance. What are you comfortable with? I mean, these are questions that, we should be asking ourselves before we even embark on the process. And if you end up going with an app, great. But understand the risks that are associated with different apps. Particularly if it involves what is called screen scraping, where you provide your banking information. Ask the question, who is going to be liable if there is a data breach or some sort of cyber hack?
That's really important. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about, investing with an app and women's risk tolerance as well, because everyone has a different risk tolerance. Everyone has a different understanding of investing. And we're going to talk about it and see which one is best for each individual. We'll be right back. We're discussing female empowerment as we work in male-dominated industries, and we actually make less money than men, and we live longer. Now, Rita, before we went to break, we were talking about women in risk, because everyone's got a very different risk tolerance. So I'd like to talk to you about technology and how it's disrupting the investment industry right now.
So it's a good thing in that there is disruption, in that there is more competition for the traditional players, which are the big banks, because it forces down the fees, right? It forces everyone to be more competitive and to make their options and their products and services more user-friendly. That's a great thing. But of course, with innovation comes risk.
Right.
And so, anyone who's new to investing should be thinking about the risks that go along with sharing your financial data with any financial company. Can they be trusted? Do they have a track record? And again, who is liable when something goes wrong?
So you and I were also talking about finfluencers, right? And it was September, beginning of October 2020, where Kim Kardashian had gone on Instagram. She did hashtag ad, and she did talk about a cryptocurrency. She is an influencer. She probably has the most followers out of anybody else in the world. And here she was touting a cryptocurrency. And, that people in our industry are not allowed to talk about making any recommendations because you need to know your client. And so the SEC came out and fined her $1 million. Buyer beware. Let's talk about cryptocurrencies and influencers.
Well, it wasn't just Kim Kardashian, the new leader of the opposition, was touting cryptocurrencies
Right,
as well.
right.
And that didn't really pan out. Obviously, cryptocurrencies have come way, way down since then. And so, again, know your risk appetite. Securities regulators around the world have been telling people for years, be prepared to lose all of your money, all of it, when it comes to cryptocurrencies. Understand that this is a very volatile investment and it's high risk. And some of these players are not registered to be providing securities.
Yes.
Beware.
And you know what? I'm so happy that you said that. People can lose all of their money. We work very, very hard for every penny that we make. Why would you risk it all in one spot? So you're 100% correct. And the other thing too is, it wasn't just Kim Kardashian. It was, you had a lot of other A-list movie stars that were saying stuff. We really have to be careful where we put our money, and we really have to think about investing for the future. You talked about emergency funds before. Explain what one is and why we need it.
Well, we need to set aside a portion of our earnings every month for savings, for emergencies, for things like a pandemic where there could be an economic shutdown, where you suddenly, lose your job. You should have at least a couple of months worth of, money to cover your expenses for at least 2 months, all of them, so you don't have to panic. And so that you have that kind of bridge financing before you, are able to get unemployment insurance or any kind of other government help.
It's interesting that you said, saving money for, an emergency fund because of something like a pandemic. But look at all the hurricanes that have happened as well. People's lives have been disrupted and they don't have a job anymore and they don't have an emergency fund. And we really have to stop looking at living paycheck to paycheck and actually putting stuff away, putting money away on a monthly basis because, who says that the pandemic's not going to return?
And obviously, none of us are Kim Kardashian.
This is very true.
So, she's making lots of money regardless. But yeah, we have to be very, very savvy about our own our own finances.
So we have a minute before we go to commercial break. We've talked about women outliving men quite a few times within the past 10 minutes or so. What life stages should we plan for?
Plan for being single, plan for being a student and your post-secondary education, plan for getting married, whether it be same sex or opposite sex, plan for having children if that's something that you want and desire. Plan for your children's education. I'm in the middle of that right now. Plan for your retirement, and plan for being a caregiver. That is something that we really learned during the pandemic. Not just a caregiver to your children, but to your parents or any other sick relative or dependent.
Well, the key with that too is we have to take care of ourselves, because if we are not at 100% capacity, we can't be caregivers to other people. So we will be right back in a few seconds. We're discussing female empowerment. As we work in male-dominated industries, we make less than men and we live longer. And I'm joined by Rita Trichur, an award-winning journalist and a great female empowerment voice. Rita's a senior business writer and columnist at the Globe and Mail's Report on Business. So Rita, I want to talk to you about the questions at the very beginning of the show. How do women make themselves heard at work, in meetings, the boardroom, which actually goes into your personal life as well? I mean, you need to take charge.
Well, it starts from the very beginning when you are applying for jobs and negotiating your total compensation. So I'm going to tell you a story about myself because I find that it's very instructive. I didn't know how to negotiate.
I don't think a lot of women do, though.
So I had to learn, and I decided I would ask a friend of mine who is also a journalist, but in a more senior position, and who's a little bit older than me. And so I said to him, listen, I'm negotiating for this job. I really want this job, but I don't know how to negotiate and I don't want to screw it up. What do I do? And he says to me, listen, Rita, if you want to be paid like a white man, you've got to learn to negotiate like one. So sit down, get out a piece of paper, get out a pen. I'm going to tell you what you do. So number one, know what your number is. And that is your annual compensation in terms of your salary. What is your number, right? Mm-hmm. Second of all, everything else is negotiable, right? So you have to think about things like your benefits. When your benefits kick in, sometimes there's a waiting period. You can ask for that waiting period to be waived. You can ask for the probationary period to be waived. If there is a waiting period to contribute to a pension, you can ask for that to be waived.
Oh, wow.
He also advised me to negotiate a severance package, which is over and above what the norm is for the company. He said, if you require any tools to do your job, have that written into the offer letter. Everything is negotiable. So think very creatively about what you need. Ask for more vacation time than you think you might actually get, because you'll be surprised by how much you actually get. And so I kind of listened to him go through this big list, and I thought, I'm not going to get all these things. And he said, yes, you will. You're going to get 98% of what you asked for. Know what your non-negotiables are. I mean, some of these things are nice to have.
Right.
Others are essential. And so know the difference between the two. Give on the things that you really don't want as much, but put your foot down. And the other thing he said to me, which made me laugh, is he said, you need to play hard to get. So if your initial offer that you get from the company is a lowball offer, which is exactly what happened to me, he said, don't respond right away. Sure, feel insulted and enraged and all those sorts of things, but don't respond.
So walk away.
Walk away for 24 hours. Play hard to get. It'll make the hiring manager nervous that they've offended you, and they'll come back. So I listened to him, and sure enough, that's what happened. But I didn't have to wait 24 hours. The hiring manager got back to me within 12 hours and said, oh, just so you know, that was a lowball offer, and this is just the starting basis for negotiation. And I thought, wow, my friend's a genius.
No kidding.
And it all came from asking for advice and thinking very practically about what it is I need and asking for it without apology or explanation.
So my mother always said, if you don't know, ask. And you've just proven that right here. Now, we've got about 30 seconds left, and I want to talk about you being 6 years old and you You wrote your first story and you got paid for it.
Yes.
So how did that happen?
Well, I saw that the Toronto Star at the time had a children's page, they had a short story contest, and I decided to enter. And they, lo and behold, they published my story and they sent me a check for $10. And at age 6, that blew my mind. And I decided right then and there, I'm going to be a journalist when I grow up.
Well, good for you. That is awesome. Thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom. And I know that so many young women will be able to pick up from it and actually use it in their lives going forward. Ladies, in order to be successful, you need to be able to make decisions. And it doesn't matter whether the decision you make is correct, as long as you make one. Now, you see, with every incorrect decision you make, you'll build upon your foundation for success. That foundation will build your confidence over the years, and you'll be able to make bigger and better decisions. And remember, you don't have to know the answer to everything. That's a lot of pressure and quite impossible. Surround yourself with great people and professionals, and you will never fail at anything. Because when you don't know the answer to something, someone from your circle of friends will know. Experience is a collection of mistakes. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here trying to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Bye for now.